I'm old enough to remember when Mark Mosley won the MVP. He was a kicker. And he wasn't a soccer-style kicker. He was a straight-on kicker for the then Washington Redskins. And they led the NFL in scoring, and they decided to give it to a kicker. I don't know if Chris Boswell is going to be an MVP candidate. I don't know if he'll get any votes, but keep this in mind. He has 29 field goals. I think he has one miss so far after 10 games. That was a 62-yarder. The record of most field goals in a single season. Does anybody want to guess how many and who has that record? Todd, the most field goals in a single season, NFL history, was how many and by whom?
I'm going to say 44 by Mark Mosley.
I'm going to give you a bloop on the 44.
Ooh.
This kicker did it in 2011. 2011. Marvin?
Billy Cundiff.
Billy Cundiff.
You should give it to him.
I'm going to give you.
He was the Ravens
just a
kicker.
bloop for that. Okay. Seton.
Steven Gostkowski.
Steven Gostkowski. All right. Paulie.
Just to have fun with what Marv was saying. Rob Baronis.
Rob Baronis. My Baronis. David Akers of your 49ers, Marvin, had 44 field goals. Segue to Gerry Dulac, who's been covering the Steelers since 1993. Steelers at the Browns. Weather will play a role. And let's bring in Gerry. Gerry, good to see you again. I'm serious about what Boswell's done. I mean, I don't know the last time a field goal kicker even was in the top 5 in MVP, but what he's done for this team, can't argue that. He's the best kicker in the NFL.
Yeah, Dan, good morning. I knew that answer. It's David Akers because I looked it up the other day, and Boswell's actually on pace, obviously, to break it. He's only the second kicker in history to kick 6 field goals in a game twice in the same season, and now is the only one to do it 3 times in his career in the regular season. Yeah, 29 out of 30, and the only miss was that 62-yarder. Pretty good.
Do you think he's been the MVP for this team?
You can make an argument, that's for sure. I mean, Najee Harris has been pretty good. TJ Watt is just so disruptive defensively. But the fact that the quarterback duty has been split, so it'd be hard to cast that vote just now. But you can make a pretty good argument that Chris Boswell might be their team MVP. And I bet if they had to vote today, I bet the Steeler players would probably vote their kicker.
Fill in the blank. Russell Wilson's play so far has been what?
I would say as expected. And by that, I mean, Dan, that's the reason why they brought him in. That's the reason why they put him in as the starter after six games, even though Justin Fields was 4-2. I think he's played, considering how little he played, the 6 series in the preseason that played the last 2 regular season games last year. The fact that he had been pretty much inactive for an extended period and to come in and play as well as he has, Dan, that's been a little surprising. But again, that's why they made this move. So that's why I would say what I did.
Weather's probably going to play a role in this. Does that favor this? I know they're favored by 3.5, but does that favor them even more so that it could be defense run the ball?
Dan, despite the fact that the Steelers historically have dominated the Browns the last kind of 6-7 years, there's nothing in their advantage. I think they're 1-4-1 in their last 6 games there, and those haven't been a strong Browns teams. But I think the Steelers want to come in and run the ball anyhow. When I look at the forecast, it looks like shortly after game time that whatever weather is there is going to stop. The good news is I'm driving up in a little while, and it looks while I'm driving I should be okay. But at least it looks like anything bad stops by 9 o'clock. So we'll see. But I think the Steelers wanting and to run the ball and ability to run the ball would certainly be to their advantage.
Okay, let's size up the Steelers, how they compare to Buffalo, how they compare to Kansas City, any other team in the AFC.
Dan, record-wise, it would indicate that they are right up there with those teams. Of course, tied with Buffalo, a game behind the Chiefs. I'm not ready to anoint them one of the three top contenders in the AFC. Now, record-wise, it would certainly suggest, despite what we saw Sunday and despite the records, I've thought all along that the Ravens were the best team in the AFC. Now, their pass defense, is not very good. We saw the way Joe Burrow ripped it. The Steelers did what I didn't think any team could do, was slow the Ravens, fewest yards, fewest points, fewest first downs. They have Lamar Jackson's number. I actually think Mike Tomlin, he must be in John Harbaugh's head. They've won 8 of the last 9 meetings, and despite how good the Ravens are in that time frame. They have more wins than the Steelers in that time frame. They have more playoff wins in that time frame. But the Steelers have their number. Maybe a little bit like how the Browns have a little bit of something over the Steelers in these last 6 games. But, we'll see. I mean, there's still ways to go. The Steelers have a tough schedule, but they've been very good in their defense, obviously is their strong point. But what we've seen with Russell Wilson has the ability, has brought that offense almost to the level where if they have to, they might be able to bail out the defense. And that wasn't always the case these last couple of years.
When do you know if Mike Tomlin's in a good mood? Never after any game. He's in a more of a testy mood after a win because he doesn't want to send a message to his players that he's giddy or happy. And I've always thought that after his Tuesday press conferences, he's more he's a little more direct and stern and wanting to send messages to his players that way after a win than he is after a loss. He tends to be more hopeful and positive, believe it or not, after a loss, looking forward. And again, it's the same message he wants to deliver. So, not not very frequently, but every now and then we'll catch him in that mood. Okay, what's the question that sets him off?
Well, first of all, who's going to be your starting quarterback? That one has ended. That was the one that usually got him. But you know what sets him off? The person who's asking it, Dan. It all depends who's asking the question. I usually get, I will just tell you some measure of respect from him, it seems, and I'm not saying he disrespects, but I think it's more who asks the question as opposed to what the question is that sometimes gets him maybe a little testy.
And he's young-ish. How long do you see him coaching?
Yeah, I think that's up to him. And there were whispers kind of nationally from, I guess, maybe his people or people who claim to know him. And I honestly believe, Dan, that very few people know this guy. But he's a football junkie. If there is a coach who watches more film than Mike Tomlin, I want to meet him. And I have not seen any decline in passion, motivation. And so, I mean, he can coach. He has Bill Cowher's ticket. He has Chuck Noll's ticket. He can coach pretty much as long as he wants to.
But then there's the postseason record.
That's right.
I don't know. I mean, great regular season, always a winning record, but he has not done well in the postseason in a long time. Yeah,
7 years without a playoff win, Dan. Longest drought they've had since the Immaculate Reception game when their first playoff win. 0-5, and with at least 2 of those as home games, and that's kind of what rankles the fan base here. If he wins tonight, that's 18 consecutive non-losing seasons to start a career. Nobody's done that. But it's that recent playoff record. Haven't been to the Super Bowl since 2010. Granted, they're spoiled here with the 6 Lombardis and 9 appearances. 8 appearances. But and I think that was kind of the edict, somewhat of an edict that was set forth by the team owner, Art Rooney II, after the season, where he effectively said he's growing impatient, and it's time to win playoff games. That's why they went out and got Patrick Queen. That's why they went out and got Russell Wilson. They traded for Dante Jackson. They brought in Deshaun Elliott. They made a lot of big time and big money acquisitions in free agency for the first time ever, and that was all part of it. Okay, let's get this done now. Not maybe a Super Bowl. I don't think they're ready for that, Dan, but I definitely think they're ready to for postseason and a postseason victory. But we shall see.
Safe travels. Thank you, Gerry.
Thanks, man. Always good chatting with you, Dan.
That's Gerry Dulac, who's been covering the Steelers for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette since 1993. So weather an issue leading up to the game, according to Gerry, and probably stopping once the game gets started.